Everything is stories. We really want to believe in the truth of some of these stories. Some of these stories we'll subscribe to as truth, and we might want to feel we have to defend them against the stories of others. Science gives us stories, and people like to say the scientific stories are true. But what does that mean? Science has its own power. It allows us to give us stories about how the world came to be. It gives us technology, which is pretty impressive, and that allows us to manipulate our environment. But why call that truth? Because science allows us to manipulate our environment, why call that truth? Politics allows us to manipulate our environment. Look at communism. Look what it did in the 20th century. Look at fascism. Look at what it did. These are stories. Communism is a story. Economics is a story. Fascism is a story. Religion is a story. Islam is a story. Christianity is a story. Hinduism is a story. And there are lots of stories within these stories. Depending on your disposition, your culture, you will want to fight for the truth of your particular story. But what does that mean? You just want your story to be the one that everybody else listens to. You can drop all these stories. You can realize they all have their part to play. They've all got their area of influence. A lot of scientists are religious. And you think, well, that's strange because surely the scientific stories and the religious stories don't match. And it's true, they don't match. But the religious stories address different aspects of being. They address different aspects of our psyche than the scientific stories do. And there are stories which try to reconcile different stories, maybe into one big story. We like to do that as well, don't we? Some great synthesis. Hinduism's quite good at that, isn't it? But anyway, ultimately we can drop all stories. We can realize our tendency to create stories, or to listen to stories, to get involved in stories, and our tendency to really want to believe in these stories. But spirituality is about letting go of stories, even stories of spirituality. And I think that must be very challenging for most people. We define ourselves in terms of our stories. We have stories about ourselves. Can we drop these stories? Can we really move away from these stories? Well, if we can move away from these stories, then we can get in touch with the storyteller, the story maker. And this arises through self-inquiry. We can get in touch with this story maker. This is the infinite consciousness. Such a state of purity of the self, the true nature of the infinite consciousness, is not a vision, an experience of the mind and the senses. It's not some kind of mystical revelation. It's not a divine vision. It's simply being aware of what is. Not what we want it to be, not what we want to make it into, but what is, which means dropping all stories and being present, being witness to the moment. It is incapable of being taught. You can only teach via stories. It is not very easy, nor is it far distant or impossible. It is attained by direct experience alone. It's not easy because it's very subtle. We've got to get over our psychological tendency to want to believe in stories. That tendency has taken us away from realization of our nature. It's not far distant in the sense that you have to struggle through some path of mental and physical purification to reach it. You don't have to do it. It's not distant. And many of the modern traditions think that enlightenment isn't even possible anymore because of the times we live in. So they've kind of dismissed it. I think certain Buddhists believe this. It is attained by direct experience alone. And what should be difficult about direct experience? It means experiencing what is, as it is, and not filtering it, not thinking about it, not conceptualizing it. There's stuff happening, and we can just let it happen. That alone exists, not else, neither the body nor the senses and life force. So these are stories. We also get this life force story of prana. So here we're being told, please note if you're into prana, that it doesn't exist either. Neither the mind nor the storehouse of memory or latent tendencies, neither the jiva nor even a movement in consciousness, neither consciousness nor the world exist. As soon as you start saying something exists, you're creating a story about it. It is neither real nor unreal, nor something in between, neither void nor non-void, neither time nor space nor substantiality. Free from all these, and free from 100 veils in the heart, one should experience the self in all that is seen. In other words, just experience what is, rather than make a story about it. And that's an interesting expression, free from 100 veils in the heart, because we don't want to do this. We love our stories. You might even want to take on board what I'm saying, but there's a little voice going, but, what about this? I'm not going to let go of that story about who I am and my family and all the rest of it and my culture and my job, and I'm not going to let go of all these stories. I'm not going to let go of my story about the Big Bang because I'm a scientist, or I'm not going to get caught up in religion, or I'm not going to let go of my story about God or Shiva or Sai Baba or whatever. You don't actually have to. You can embrace it all, because your stories are also part of what is happening right now. It is neither the beginning nor the end, because it is ever present everywhere. It is taken for something else. Thousands are born and thousands die, but the self which is everywhere, inside and outside, is not affected. It remains in all these bodies, etc., as if it were just a little different from the infinite. Though radiantly engaged in diverse activities, remain free from the sense of I-ness and mine-ness. For whatever is seen in this world is Brahman, free from characteristics and qualities. It is eternal, peaceful, pure, and utterly quiescent. So if it seems quite terrifying to let go of your stories, then you can appreciate that there's something very beautiful, radiant, and peaceful as an alternative. Our stories inevitably lead to mental distress, to agitation. We can let go of them. We no longer need to identify with them. We no longer need to worry about the truth of our stories.